Welcome back. This is episode 10 of Bible Time with Larry. And I'm here. I'm Larry, obviously. This is my wife, Pam.
Hello.
We are on our episode 3 of marriage.
Part 3.
Part 3.
Episode 10 of, I guess, season 1.
Yes.
Bible Time
Gotta
with
get
Larry.
really specific. Conflict resolution. There we go. You know what? I think I'm just going to leave that in. That's our intro. We're going to get into it. Just a minute. Okay, are you ready? This is conflict resolution. Now, some people, we've talking to a few people, and some say, one person, I'm not going to name names, and I kind of agree with him, but when you hear me say it, you're going to be like, there's no way. They think they should not have conflict in your marriage.
Now, I did go back and ask that person.
Yeah.
And they said, define your term.
Well, also...
So after elaboration, there was a consensus that, yes, there probably will be conflict in marriage.
If you listen to the way I worded it, and this is important because this will get into our part of the conflict.
Yeah, exactly.
How things are worded and how you hear them. And when you hear something, we automatically interpret it. So when the first time I heard it, I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. There's going to be conflict because you got two people. But if you listen to what I said you should not have conflict.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're not going to.
Yeah.
It just means, technically we should not.
If you're both Christians and you're walking after Christ and following the Bible and doing the things that were taught in there, then no, there shouldn't be any conflict.
Or if you're two perfect people,
that's just
there
not
should
how
not
it
be
works.
conflict. But so that is part of it, right?
We're aiming for that goal,
right?
But we're not there yet. None of us are there yet.
Right, because there shouldn't be, but there is, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons why, the root causes. I would say there's multiple reasons of why there's conflict, but I think there's just two that are actually the root of the problem.
I would say key components for sure.
But before we get into that, I want to do a recap of the first two.
Okay, good idea.
Because we talked about the utilitarian aspect of marriage and more of the contractual. I can't talk that. Yeah, that's right.
Contractual.
That's right. And the business part of it, if you will, of marriage. And there is an aspect to that. And you look in the Old Testament, it seems to be that's what it is. And like how we talked about how some people got their wives and there was no input on the woman's part of it. But we're not in that. And in fact, the few societies that we can think of in modern times that still kind of practice that a little bit, not too many people want to live there.
Yeah.
And also I would say it's the women that are get the bad or the raw deal in those situations because they don't really have a lot of say in it. And I don't think that's biblical or scriptural. I should put it that way. I don't think that's the way God intended. Let me say it that way. I don't think that's what God intended.
Well said.
Yeah, because if you look at it, God said Eve was to be a helpmeet to Adam. And that means, now I don't think we'll get into these terms today. There's a couple of philosophies out there called egalitarianism or what's the other one? I can't think of it. My mind just went blank.
Probably too big of a word for me.
It's a third one, and I just lost it.
Egalitarianism was too big.
Basically, where you're equal. That's what that means. That they're equal. There's there's a different one I can't think of it. It'll come to me later. But what I think the Bible talks about is headship. And again, this is don't mean to sound arrogant. It's just the way God set it up. God set the husband to be the head. That doesn't mean the wife is inferior. It means she was created to be a helper. And the better the husband treats his wife, the more Christ-like he becomes to her, the easier it is for the wife to be a better helpmeet, right? Would you agree with that? Or
I do. And I like the way the rules are. I wouldn't want to have your responsibility.
Me either. That's just,
I noticed. No,
yeah.
just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, and that's
You do a great job.
well, but that goes into now we're going to get into some of these conflict resolutions because I think this is important to it, and it's a part of it is
Very.
these roles, if you will. I don't necessarily like that term, but I don't know how else to say it.
Mm-hmm.
If you are as a wife, and I'll say you are doing what God asked you to do, which is to submit to your husband and follow his leadership, not because the husband, and we mentioned this before, not because the husband's worthy of it or deserves it in any way. I certainly don't. And I feel it makes me feel awkward, really. And then kind of right now to talk about this in this way, I do feel a little awkward.
Right.
Because I don't deserve it and I'm not worthy of it. But that's the way God set it up. And so it's not for me to question it, it's for me to obey it. And my role is to love my wife as Christ loved the church. And if you read the whole thing, and we went into it, you can go back and listen to those episodes. But that part is the husband is to be self-sacrificing and to give up everything for his wife and to present her to himself as a spotless bride. And that takes a lot of work, and it's hard. And then what that means is you can't be selfish as a husband. And so as a wife, her role is to submit to her husband and his headship, but not because, again, like I said, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but not because he's worthy of it, but that's her way of showing her obedience to God. Does that make sense? Or
Very much.
because how else are you going to show that you're being obedient to God? There has to be some sort of evidence. And for a wife, that means being in subjection to her husband. And again, I know that can be abused, and that's a trigger word for people. But whether it is or not, this is what God said. So we need, as Christians, we need to obey it. And,
But that orchestrated the way God intends is a beautiful thing.
right, exactly.
And that brings a lot of peace and actually a lot of joy in a lot of ways.
Well, and I was going to say this, and this is probably not about conflict resolution, but it's a side note. The world accuses Christianity of being oppressive to women. That is actually not true when you look at it, because look at some of the countries in the world that really do oppress women.
Right.
Some of the Muslim countries. How many of these liberals want to live in a Muslim country where the women can't drive? Some of them can only go to school to our equivalent of the 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
So none of them want to live in that. Or you have to wear a burqa where all you can see is your eyes, and you got to walk behind so many steps behind your husband, all this. You can't drive. There's all kinds of restrictions. But in Christianity, it has actually liberated women. And I'm going to say this, you actually have a lot of freedom in the house. In fact, I don't really know our financial situation. I mean, I have an idea, but you have proven to be trustworthy and worthy to handle those things. And so in that, you have a lot of freedom because...
Thank you.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of power in that.
Is this the time I tell you about all those secret
Right.
accounts I have?
Well, yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great about now.
Right?
But there's a lot of freedom in that, right?
Absolutely.
And you have a lot. There's been most of the time I come to you and say, hey, I want to get this. Is there
Can
money
we
to
buy
buy?
this?
Yeah. Because for me, that's freeing, because that's one less thing I have to worry about. And I don't have to think about it.
And it's just not in your wheelhouse.
Well, it's not, but you have that control, that freedom, and that responsibility in a sense.
But me fixing things and building things and a lot of this stuff you do is not in my wheelhouse.
Right, exactly. So I'm free
I'm
to do
glad.
those, and you're free to do
Glad
that. And
you have those skills. You are free to do all of that anytime.
Right.
The fixing and the
yeah. So
building.
I know that's off the subject, but I just want to state that when you follow the scripture, it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely.
And that's what God. So let's get into some of the conflicts. Now, most people say, do you know what the number one reason for divorce is?
Is it finances?
Yes.
Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
I knew something.
Right. That's right. Another one is infidelity, but I think we could go, what are some others that you would think of?
the things I can think of aren't. I can't really put like a one word on, but you didn't do this, you didn't do that.
Nagging.
All
I was
you
gonna say
do. Oh, nagging.
nagging.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one word, isn't it? Oof.
Yeah,
That's a word.
And
We had that faucet that would not stop dripping that time, and that's
yeah.
all I could think of.
Yeah,
I do not want to be that because
And-
that is awful.
Yeah, so those are some things that but when you boil these things, whatever you think the conflict is, and we did a poll in through a Bible study, and
Yeah, we've been talking to people.
talking to other
It's
people,
been pretty interesting to hear.
right?
Yeah, but a lot of people were picking our two key components that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, when you boil these things down, whether, like I said, it's infidelity, financial, or whatever,
Yeah.
it comes down to two. I think
It really does. I mean,
Two
the
key
more we talk
factors.
to people, it just seemed like it kept pointing right back to these two.
And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just for a minute because I'm going to say this up front. Conflict resolution is not complicated. We make it complicated because most of the time it's our pride that gets in the way. We don't want to give up something.
Simple,
Right.
not easy.
And I'm leaving everybody hanging. But the two common factors are selfishness.
And wait, what would you think? Anybody?
You want to say the
Communication or poor communication.
right or lack of communication? Lack of communication would be poor communication.
Yeah.
But really, you think about it, everything can be boiled down to those two things. Either you're being selfish, and part of selfishness is either you want something you can't have, or you're not getting something you feel like you deserve.
Yeah.
And unless you can add something to that.
No, I just happen to think that when we were talking to people, infidelity really didn't come up
Not in our
in
circles,
that.
no.
So I would think selfishness and poor communication. I mean, I guess it does.
Well, you think about infidelity. What is
it?
it?
Works
You-
in that too, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
because you feel like you're not getting either one of the partners,
Or
the
you can
spouses,
get something better.
Right.
There's,
either,
look over there. That's better.
right?
than
We
what
know
I
a
have.
couple that she cheated on her husband. Her justification was that she really found her soulmate. The reality was she really felt like her husband was ignoring her, and partly he was. I would say he wasn't really meeting her needs. He was caught up in his own world.
And to be fair, we did not know them that well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we were at their house a couple of times, so we
Enough
know
that
them
maybe
enough.
we could
and-
see some insight that.
right, and I'm not justifying him and saying that he was completely innocent, but I'm saying you can see where, in this situation, where the selfishness, one person felt like they weren't getting what they deserved or needed or
Right.
whatever. They were looking elsewhere. Somebody else stepped into that role, gave
And
them
I'm not even
attention.
sure. I'm not even sure looking elsewhere, but when that person was presented, it was like,
Right, they got the attention
yeah,
that they felt they were lacking from their spouse, and then that's selfishness.
yep,
And-
that's true.
And as Christians, and as just people in general, nobody likes being around a selfish person. I mean, we're all to some degree selfish, and at times we're more selfish than other times.
Yeah,
But when you know people that are, it's just all about them. We call them narcissists, It's,
yeah.
but they're over selfish, and it's
Narcissist.
narcissistic.
Yeah.
I'm using these big words, but I'm messing them up. So,
Doing
but
good.
that's and we're kind of repulsed by those people. Nobody likes being around them, but in marriage, and this is what happens. There's either a lack of communication. We've had those incidents where they just, for whatever reason, we're not communicating properly, and then somebody's feelings get hurt. And usually it's I say something that is out of line or hurtful, and I meant it, and this is a character flaw on my part, and I'm trying to work on it, is I'll say something in jest, but it's hurtful, right? I don't mean it to be, and I find out later it is. But here's part of the problem. If I don't know it's hurtful, I'm going to keep doing it. Because I think, well, it's fine. So for you need to say something, right? Now
not very hard for me to do that.
Right. It's also in how you say these things.
But at the same time, I'm not typically so sensitive.
Right.
I don't know. Lately, I feel like maybe I am more.
Here's
But
here's part of the problem too. Like, because this just happened recently. To be honest, I said something and I shouldn't have, and it caused problems. And I knew it, but you didn't say anything right away.
right.
And when we do this, and maybe you guys don't, I do it. When there's a conflict like that, instead of handling it right away and say, look, what you said hurt, the way you said it, usually we stew on it for a bit.
Yeah, and I guess this time I tried to say, okay, what's the verse about overlooking an offense? Whatever that one was, I think in Proverbs.
And
there.
love covers a multitude of
Right,
sins.
and I was just like, it's okay. It's no big deal. I mean, I know he didn't mean anything by it and whatever. And so I was just going to let it go, but
just couldn't let it go.
true to personality.
So, but if you don't deal with it, then it becomes, we let it stew, and then we start conjuring in our mind. We start thinking of things, and it starts to grow in our mind, and the problem becomes bigger than what it was initially, and it's all in our mind.
The stew becomes a boil.
Right.
The boil becomes an explosion.
Yeah, because it becomes like being in a pressure cooker where it's not tightened down very
I don't
well.
like to stew.
Right.
It makes me sour.
It does, and that's that root of bitterness, and once it gets root, it's hard to get it out by the root completely. So the best thing to do is whoever is offended, just to say in a kind manner. It doesn't, not in part of how you say things. You can either add fuel to the fire, or you can put the fire out. Because like in this case, if you would have said to me,
well,
yeah. Why are you always so hurtful? You do this all the time. It just come across that way. Then my defenses automatically go up, and then I'm ready for a fight, and then that's what we get is a fight.
Right.
But in this case, I knew I offended you in some way. I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I had an idea, but we didn't let it go too long. And
just the next morning.
Right. And I said, I don't know if, and I was thinking too, you know what? If she's offended by the whatever, just let it, she can be offended. She can grow up and get over it or whatever. But that's not right on my part. And that's not good. And that is the road. And this is the problem couples have is it starts off as something little. And it's there's that, what they call a death by 1,000 cuts. It's a whole bunch of little things that are never taken care of that grow into a big thing.
And fester.
And they fester. And then by the time you realize it, it's a cancer that has metastasized and it's destructive. And so to fix it at that point is extremely difficult and very hard because it's grown so much. So what we did in this case was we just said, okay, I think you said, what you said, it was hurtful. And I realized, yeah, it was. I was guilty and I had to admit it. And I could have said, I got defensive, but I didn't want to because I knew I was in the wrong. And I hurt you and I needed to make it right. And so not letting those things fester is the best way to handle it because we're all going to be selfish at times. We can't avoid it, but we don't. That's just the reality. And poor communication. Yeah. What is it? We know a couple, they say, what is it?
This is what I heard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were going to put that under proactivity, but that is good.
Oh, okay. Well,
when you're trying to be proactive about something, but you have to do the hand motions.
This is what I heard. Now,
I think it's a great
It is, yeah.
Because honestly, we don't hear what the other person has said the way they meant it.
Right.
Very often.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm like, well, that is not what you said. You're like, that's exactly what I said. I'm like, that is not what you said. And then you say, and that's exactly what I said.
I did too.
You sounded just like that. But anyway, you have to do the hand motions. This is what I heard.
Now, there are some things you shouldn't say.
You can say that and back up for a minute,
Yeah,
right? Maybe
right.
you can be proactive with.
Now, if you say, just calm down, that is not the way to do it. Or if you're going to yell at me, go fix your hair. I knew somebody, I worked with a guy that's what he said to his wife. Did not
He
go over.
literally said that
Yeah.
in the middle of a blow up.
Not, those are things not to do. Yeah, and if you have to say you need to calm down, nobody who has been told that I know of has ever calmed down. It just makes it worse.
Yeah.
So don't.
Yeah.
So just say, look, you may have heard that way. This is what I said. This is what I meant.
Yeah.
And if I miscommunicated, I'm sorry. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Or maybe I did say it the way you heard it. I didn't mean it that way.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I meant. Because let's face it, we all misspeak at times. We have poor communication. So just own it.
We say things we shouldn't have said.
Right.
And we know it. Yes. I'm the very first person to get defensive, but I like how you say someone has to take the first step.
Right.
And if you can both yield a little bit, meet each other in the middle, so to speak.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this too. This is something that came up. Now, we both have combined 64 years of marriage experience.
That's pretty good, hon.
You like that?
Well, coming up soon. It's not quite there, but
Pretty close. I mean, I think
so
it's
close. What?
yeah, we're having our
20
32nd
days
wedding
away, yeah.
anniversary.
Not even 20 days away.
Yeah.
Trying to get these notes.
You have to realize, especially I'm going to talk to husbands on this one. So wives, you can listen to it, whatever. But as a husband, you need to understand that your wife has your best interest at heart. She should. And give her the benefit of the doubt. And this is going to be we're not going to have a personal segment because some of these stories are going to be personal. And these are real things that happen between us. There was a time, and I don't know if you'll remember this. We didn't talk about this before.
I'm still hung up on the wives have the husband's best interest at heart because I don't think that's true with everyone I know.
They should. But in this
That's
is,
the word.
I'm
They
saying
should.
to the husbands, give your wife the benefit of the doubt that she wants the best for you. And I think that's
She
true.
might want the best for you because
Well-
I think there are some women that don't, honey.
No, I think they do. But I think other circumstances.
Are we having a conflict?
Okay.
We're gonna go with that.
We're going to move on.
We might edit that.
There was a time where you came to me and you told me some character flaws about me. One, that I was sarcastic and condescending. And
Sorry, I said that.
yeah, but I had to realize it kind of hurt me, kind of ruffled my feathers a bit. But I thought about it. I'm like, well, it's not wrong. It's just, it is true. I can be very snarky and sarcastic, and I added one there, condescending. So I had to think, okay, I can either get hurt and offended by that, or I can say, okay, well, does she have my best interest at heart? And I said, yes. If that is the case, then what she's telling me, although it may be hurtful, it is the truth. And if it's the truth, then I need to work on me so that I can be a better person. She's just pointing out something that is there, and she did it. I don't know if you thought this through, but I thought, okay, she's doing it for my benefit so that I can become a better person. And that was
That was totally why I did it.
yeah, my initial reaction was to get offended. But I took a moment to think about it and thought, okay, well, it's true, for one. So I had to admit that. And two, if you do love me and want the best for me, then you would tell me the truth.
Yeah,
And-
I probably didn't say it the best way though.
No, but it
There's
didn't
still
matter.
A lot
It
of
was,
growth in there.
well, it's still the truth. So I had to step aside, put my emotions to the side, and say, okay, that statement, is it true or is it false? If it's true, what was the motivation? Maybe the motivation was because I said something snarky that hurt her feelings and was condescending. That probably happened. But was she saying it to make me a better person, to point out a flaw that I need to work on. And I said, okay, well, let's go with that rather than get hurt. And I think sometimes that's part of the not being selfish and kind of taking the high road. And like you said, somebody has to yield. In a conflict like that, in order to come to an agreement, somebody has to make the first step to walk towards the middle, to say, okay, I'm willing to make some concessions in some form. If neither party's willing to do that, then there cannot be any resolution. Yeah. So somebody has to make that first step. And then eventually, hopefully, the other person will take a step towards the center, and then you can start towards restoration and resolution. And like I said, these things are simple. They're not always easy. Simple does not equate with easy. Sometimes it's hard. Because we get emotional, we get offended, we're angry. And
different personalities at play,
right? And
how do you think that?
Go ahead. I was going to say,
how do you think that plays into all this?
Because I think that's a bunch of hooey. The personality profiles and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a part in there that plays somewhere,
right?
Okay, I'm being biblical or whatever. You're not so sure.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's biblical per se. I just think it's part of human nature. And these things, it falls under the side of behavioral psychology. There's a lot of stuff in there that we can understand who we are as a person and why we act the way we do. And I think it's helpful. Like I'm more, what's the word? Phlegmatic? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
I would be, or as if you know anything with the Pearls, their personality profiles, I would be Command Man.
Mr. Steady.
No, I'm just kidding. Mr. Steady. Yeah, that's so knowing those things is helpful so that you can understand your spouse a little better and how to communicate with them. It goes back to that because you like to be more direct.
Right.
But also you have a sensitive side. So knowing that is helpful to me because I tend to want to clarify everything before I make a statement. It is part of who I am and
and you're a teacher at heart. So you start rattling off all these great facts and everything. And sometimes people you're talking to are like, yep.
And you just go,
I know that. Well, when you start monologuing
I know.
and using all them big words, I'm like, I'm not tracking sometimes. But now I'm just honest with you.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Or I fall asleep.
Right. But no, so that's where these personality profiles can be beneficial, is knowing who your spouse is, why they think the way they do, or how they think is very helpful. And also to help you understand who you are as a person. These things can be. Now, part of the problem with this is we put ourselves in a box and say, well, that's just who I am. Well, that may be who you are, but there is room for growth. That doesn't mean you have to stay there. You can grow and expand who you are.
Yeah, I was looking for a past post actually from my friend Beth, and she wrote something. She articulated it very well, that people who jump on and just say, that's just who I am, and I'm sorry if it hurt your feelings, and they can use personalities as an excuse to be rude or to just say whatever they want to say. And I never did find her post. I actually reached out to her and asked if she could re-articulate that for me, but I didn't hear back from her. But it's true. You can't just, like you say, don't let yourself be boxed into a personality.
Right.
But if you can use it to understand where the other person's coming from and why you are the way you are in a way, fine. But don't be boxed there, and don't use it as a thing where you can't grow from there.
Right. Now, I'm going to address something, and we didn't talk about this either, but there is usually if you say, okay, I made a mistake, I was wrong, you go to your spouse. In this case, if like the incident we mentioned, I said, okay, I was in the wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. What I said, I shouldn't have said. I meant it in jest, but it didn't come out that way. And I was sincere. Be sincere about that. If that's the case, be sincere. Now, generally the other person is going to say they're going to welcome that and say, okay, because you're going to recognize you're humbling yourself, you're coming and you want restoration. But there are going to be times, and we know couples where they don't want that. And what do you do in those cases?
What do you do, and why would people want to just stay in conflict when there's an open door to have that release, to be done with it?
Right. And I think
not have to.
This is what
like
kind of where we talked about with going back to the one person about there shouldn't be conflict. We know there are couples that where the wife, for whatever reason, the church she grew up in or the culture or whatever, that the wife has no say and she cannot disagree with her husband whatsoever. Mm-hmm. There's a problem with that because something is going to give in some way. Either in the case of the wife, she is going to withdraw
or snap.
And one day and we know of a couple where this happened. They've been married several years, and then he thought the marriage was going great. Everything was wonderful until it wasn't. He found out. She thought they had a very poor marriage. Her view of it was awful. She felt oppressed or whatever. And now he's trying to restore it. And from my understanding, he's trying to make it right. She doesn't want to. And in that case, as much as you may want to, you can't force the other person to be there. The problem is, and I don't know this whole situation, but in these cases, if the wife can't express how she feels or say she's been offended or hurt or whatever, like I said, there's going to come a time where something is going to give. Either she's going to just explode one day and that's it, I'm leaving, packing your bags or whatever. Yeah. Or she's just going to withdraw from you. And then you're going to be like, what happened? How come there's no romance? Where's that spark?
And that gets to the proactive part of it.
Yeah, or we fell out of love. Or she's going to find a soulmate and be gone,
What do you think about that? Was it my soulmate or not God's best or first pick?
That's a bunch of hogwash. That's another teaching that I was a part of. I didn't teach it, but I was under this teaching, was that if you have a bad marriage, it means you didn't marry God's best for you. If you're struggling in your marriage,
pick.
Yeah, you marry God's second best or maybe third best. That's hogwash. Bunch of baloney. I remember
hearing that when we were courting somebody. I don't know, somewhere I heard that along the line, and I was like, no way. I am not going up that aisle or down that aisle, whatever we decided.
Yeah.
Whatever it was to get married, that I'm not going unless I know 100% that this is my guy.
Well, and that's a good point. Before you get married, you should be 100% sure you want to marry that person.
And I'm not saying that there's only one person and, all that. I'm just saying go before the Lord. He can give you that assurance that this is the person you should marry.
Right. But even if you have doubts, once you're married, you're married.
You're married.
God says he hates divorce.
Let go of the doubts.
Yeah.
And make it work.
And we know people that have had bad marriages, but they turned it around. Mm-hmm. They did what God said. Excuse me.
Got themselves out of the way a little bit, right?
Right. And they've turned their marriage around.
Selfless.
And now they have a glorious marriage because it doesn't matter necessarily whether you married God's number one pick for you or third pick or whatever.
Or even believe in that.
Or yeah. Or if you were just a couple of sinners that were shacking up and then you got married, but then you got saved and now you're learning, you can still have a great marriage.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, as they say, it's not how you start the race, it's how you finish. Yeah. So now going back to preventative measures, what would you say would be one of the best things?
I didn't think we were going to talk about that subject.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess we are getting short on time. I don't. We
kidding.
have
said preventative measures.
Oh, proactive. Oh yeah, I just caught that.
Sorry.
That might be on the next episode.
I thought we were keeping this family friendly.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Sorry. I just went the wrong direction.
That's a different subject. Well, Alrighty. Yeah,
Would you like
resolutions.
to reword that?
Proactive.
Being proactive to not have conflict in your
Yeah,
marriage.
yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, we'll go with that
How
one.
about that wording?
It's just-
Okay.
goodness.
Okay. What did we say? Well, Karen's idea of this is what I heard.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good to just back up. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
This is what I heard.
Well, communicate. Yeah, just learn to communicate. If
Yep.
you're not good, some of these things, if you're not good at, just like anything, it's going to be awkward at first.
Yeah.
But do it. The more you do something, the better you get at it.
Right.
And learn how. Don't just blurt it out.
Yeah.
But have a little kindness. Paul says to speak the truth in love, because sometimes the truth hurts. Let's just face it. The truth hurts. So you got to soften it a bit, season it.
Yeah. Season
So,
I talked to our son Andrew, who's very newly
oh,
married.
yeah.
I thought he had some great stuff to say, though. One of the things he said was that they're going to try, and we know, how it doesn't always work
Right.
forever, but for a good long time, I mean, we did some things pretty traditionally or ritualistically, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that was really great building marriage building things in the beginning there. But Andrew said that they want to spend 10 quality minutes at least talking to each other, looking at each other. Just the world can go away for those 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And they just, turn their phones off.
Yeah. I just thought of a story. I don't know if
okay.
you want me to tell about the miscommunication with a baby name.
Oh, no, that's way too long.
Well, no, I'll make it quick.
And
This is
then
funny. To talk about miscommunication and being on your phone, getting ready for work one morning. I'm sitting there eating breakfast, playing on my phone. You're at the table. I'm in the kitchen.
I'm on the phone.
She's in the living room or dining room on the phone, and we're eating. And a family we know, they just had a new baby, and she's playing a game on her phone, a word game. And I said something about the baby's name. I said, "Oh, what did they name their baby?" Well,
And I didn't hear him say that. And I said, Ryson. What is Ryson?
and I said, "Ryson? Who named their baby Ryson?"
And I didn't hear him say who would name their baby.
So I'm thinking all day that this family
And
named
then I look up ricin, and ricin is a
it's
poison.
a poison.
He goes, "That's a poison."
So later that evening, I get on Facebook, look at the family, and find out the real baby's name. I'm like,
And but before you got to that point, you're like, I have to find out if they really named that baby Rice. And I was like, what?
she's like, "What are you talking
Dude,
about?"
they didn't name their baby Rice. And
Why
he
would
goes,
they-
well, that's what you said this morning. I said no such thing.
And that created an argument because I said, "You did. We were sitting right there at the table, and you were in the table. I was in the kitchen." And I said that. She goes, "I didn't say that." I said, "You did." And went back and forth, and it created an argument.
And I obviously wouldn't say that. And they named
Right.
their baby Esther. What a pretty name.
Yeah,
And I'm like, not Ryson.
But that goes to, if you're going to communicate, you need to be there.
Yeah.
Don't be on your phone.
That is true.
Because that's where miscommunications happen.
See, so
And
I
that's-
think we could have used that 10
Yeah.
minute
Oh, it would
eye
have made a big
contact
difference.
time
It would have
and
saved an argument for sure.
being here now
Anyway,
with
yeah.
each other.
I don't know where we're at in time. We are, as you
know.
notice, a different studio. We don't have our studio
This
yet.
isn't our studio, but this is
The Charleston Brothers studio. So if you want to watch their YouTube
their
channel, the
great
Charleston
new
Brothers.
studio.
But we have a new system we're working on, but I don't have a timer, so I don't know how long we've been going. I got to
Hours.
figure that out.
I'm sure these people are like, are they ever gonna?
But just to recap this, I'm going to say.
Oh, wait! I gotta say
Oh.
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Because I talked to my friend Sandy.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
And
Oh,
she
did you
said-
get? Did you hear back from her?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It wasn't very nice what I did, actually. I texted her and said, hey, we're doing a session on marriage conflict or conflict in marriage. And I know you've had a lot of experience with
That's so bad.
in this department, which is not true. I mean, probably the same amount that we've had,
Right.
average, whatever.
Yeah.
They've gone through things and they work through things and they do a great job working through it. But I said, and I'd like to have your input. since you have gone through it so much.
And then left it at that.
And then she didn't text me back. And it was like a day and a half later, and I was like,
Uh-oh.
she never texted me back. I totally offended her, which I have a great relationship with her, so I didn't think so. But I was like, oh, my goodness. Either she dropped her phone in the water, which that's happened before, I think,
Yeah.
or she's lost it or whatever.
Or they're in a major
Or
conflict.
they're in a conflict, and I shouldn't have left it that way.
Wrong timing.
But anyway, so she did text back, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, she was not offended. And she has a great idea that I think goes a long way in a lot of marriages, is to have a date night. Now, not everybody can go out
Right.
and do something and spend money, or, take a walk and leave the kids at home or get sitters or whatever. But they would even put the kids to bed early one night, or them in a different room where they're playing games and eating popcorn or whatever. And then, Sandy and her husband would have their time alone. So anyway, if anything you can make work like that is good. Sorry.
Yeah, I know a couple. They took this. He actually bought some old school buses. He was going to convert them to campers, but he took the stop signs that come out with the red lights.
Yeah.
He put those above their door.
That is great.
And so when it was their date night, he had it rigged up so they could turn the red lights on, so the kids knew.
That's awesome.
And it said stop, and it had 2 red lights, so they knew mom and dad are having their date night or whatever in their time. And
that's great.
Yeah. These things, there are simple things, but I would say the biggest thing is, one, in yourself, recognize your own selfishness and be willing to apologize, be willing to accept responsibility, and then be willing to apologize and make it right.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get past that, if you can't recognize that you're probably the problem, you're the problem.
Oh.
I mean, that's...
You said that out loud.
I know. But that's the thing. You have to take an honest look at yourself and realize, if you look at yourself and you say, and your marriage is in trouble, and you're looking at the other person, you're the problem. Because you're not willing to recognize that you had you had a say in this. You had a part to play in your bad marriage. And you also have a part to play in your restoration and good marriage. So take that road.
Choices.
Choices, yeah.
I guess we should have put that on there too, because that is really important, but that goes back to selfishness.
Yeah, if you choose to be selfish or not, then there's your problem. If you choose to be selfish, you're going to create problems.
Yeah.
If you choose not to be selfish, you're not going to have problems.
If you choose not to communicate, you're
Right.
probably going to have problems.
Yeah.
If you choose to communicate, try to do it the right way.
Yeah, and learn it. Yeah, communicate
How
correctly.
you want to be communicated.
It sounds
to.
kind of like the golden rule, right?
And with.
Treat others the way you like to be treated.
That makes me think of our son. He said, what did he say? Well, I was only treating him the way he treated me.
Right, yeah. Treat others the way
They treat you.
they treat you, yeah. So,
The golden rule. Remember, it was really funny.
yeah, I think we've gone a little
I think
long.
that was Andrew. I'm sure we have. We may have to edit some of this out anyway.
But I know last time we said this week we were going to do conflict resolution and romance.
You did say
I did.
romance.
But we thought this was important. In fact, if you notice, we have no sponsor because we thought this was so important. We didn't want to interrupt it with a commercial.
Yeah, we
So-
turned them all away for this week.
We did. So,
Wink.
yeah, we're gotten a little rough on the money situation, but we'll be all right. So next time we're going to talk about the romantic part of romance. That's a very important part of marriage. But if you can't get past the conflict, then the romance ain't happening.
It ain't going to be there.
Also, if you're not practicing the romance, you're probably going to have conflict, and that so they kind of go hand in hand. But anytime you have two or more people trying to live together, there's going to be conflict. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Not that we want it, not that it is supposed to. It's just going to, because everybody's imperfect, and there's going to be a time where you either get tired or you're frustrated at work or something's going to happen, and then you're going to take it out on the other person. It's just going to happen. That I'd like to say it's avoidable, but it should be, but it's not. So it's not a matter of if the conflict comes, it's a matter of when and how you deal with it and how you handle it. If you let it stew and simmer, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, the quicker
So,
the better if you can resolve.
Yeah. Just take care of it right away.
Soonest is best, but
And
I get it.
I know we keep saying, well, this is it, but I keep thinking of more things. But honestly, if you could just take care of it right away and don't let it fester, it's so much better. And if you
and then have that little makeup session.
right, that's part of the romance part.
Oops.
But
Speaking in code. Wink.
but be willing to communicate honestly. It goes back to communication. If you're, let me see, how do I say this? I don't want to. If you're a type of person that doesn't like to deal with it and you just kind of want to sweep it under the rug and forget about it, you didn't deal with it. It's still there, and you keep sweeping things under the rug. Pretty soon you're going to trip over that mound that's on the rug. So just go ahead and deal with it. Deal with it honestly. And like I said earlier, sometimes the truth hurts. Let it. It's like when you get a splinter in your finger and you let it fester, it hurts to get it. And the best way to get healing and let that sore heal is to get that splinter out. It may hurt getting it out, but it's going to allow for that wound to heal faster. Yeah. So be willing to be able to communicate and talk honestly with each other, even though it may hurt at first. But try to control your emotions, but be honest with each other and communicate honestly, and that'll make a big difference. But if you're not willing to do that, then it's just you're gonna have you're just kicking the can down the road, and you're gonna make the conflict worse later, because it will come out sooner or later. So just deal with it. Be honest with each other. Be kind. You can be honest but be kind at the same time. So be kind but be honest, and just communicate.
What's the proverb that says, he who angers first loses?
Yeah, it's an old Chinese proverb.
Stay calm.
So
that's coming from me, which doesn't mean a lot to anybody else, but if you can stay calm.
yeah.
No.
It does make a difference,
I'm
really.
growing.
And the romance part of it can be amazing. I just will stop there.
Spoil each other.
Right. Exactly. The way God intended.
Yeah.
God created this, and we'll save that for next week. A couple of episodes ago, we had a sponsor of RMO, Rocky Mountain Outreach, Elliot, and his wife, Tiana. We were hoping to do a interview with them. We did, but we're not able to get it all together yet. So hopefully on the next episode, we actually have a Zoom call with them, and they talk about RMO and all about that. So
yeah,
stay tuned.
Went into detail on
Yeah,
that,
a lot of detail. It's a
so
good
probably
thing.
the beginning or middle of December sometime.
Right. That'll be
We'll get that
hopefully
one.
the next episode. We'll have it all together, and we'll be able to put that in with the episode.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if you're looking for an exercise program, you can lift heavy, but one thing you should not carry that's too heavy to carry is a grudge. So,
Okay.
all righty. So until next week, or maybe not next week, 2 weeks, you know what I mean. Till the next episode.
Yes.
We'll see you then.
See you then.